Hi, it's Mike from Pro Tools Expert, and today we're going to take a look at a brand new release of Penteo. We've shown you Penteo 3 and then more recently Penteo 4 Pro, but the guys at Audio Tech Digital have just released the latest version of Penteo, and it's now Penteo 7 Pro. And the reason it's Penteo 7 Pro is because now we have a 7.1 option. So the first thing to notice is that anything up to 5.1, the background is sort of bluey colour, and as soon as you go to 7.0, 7.1, the background is dark grey black colour. Perhaps now, instead of calling it Penteo, Pent from 5 and the AO from stereo, perhaps it ought to be called Septeo, but perhaps that one's best left alone. So it's now Penteo 7, and obviously now the 7 does represent the fact that it supports up to 7.0, 7.1. Because now you can use Penteo 7 with its 7.1 feature to integrate into your immersive sound workflows, whether that's Dolby Atmos or Auro 3D. And of course, it really doesn't matter whether it's 5.1 or 7.1, we have so much legacy content. Most of our sound effects are going to be stereo, although obviously some people are growing a library of surround content, but the reality is a lot of our legacy content will be stereo. And so to have the ability to upmix up to 7.1 and bring that into Dolby Atmos or Auro 3D workflows is a really, really good move. So let's take a quick look around the interface. As you can see, it's been reskinned. It's a lot easier to read. We've still got the option to use the mouse scroll wheel to scroll around the different settings, which is really useful. So just a brief reminder of the way the session works here. I've got a track here with a variety of different stereo content on it as my source track. I can either upmix that to 5.1 or upmix it to 7.1. And then in each case, the 5.1 will come back to a 5.1 down mixer. And I'm just using the Avid down mixer. Or alternatively, we can go up to 7.1 and then back down to 7.1 down mix. Obviously on the YouTube video, we can't demonstrate how the 5.1 and 7.1 outputs sound. You'll just have to take my word for it. But one of the things that I can demonstrate, and is really a key part of any upmixing workflow, is how well the upmix downmixes. So what you'll be listening to is either the result of the downmix or the original stereo content, so we can compare the two. So let's go back to the Penteo 7 plugin and let's play some music. So, as I was saying, you're now listening to the down mix of the upmix. Here's the original stereo. Back to the surround down mix. And yet again, they are, to all intents and purposes, identical. They do explain in the manual that they can't guarantee it's an absolute bit-for-bit identical version, but really just listening to the original stereo and the down mix, they are so close, and that's really, really important to make sure that we've got the backwards compatibility. Now here we have some music, and we're on the Penteo music setting. And the first thing is, again, we've got these mute and solo buttons, so I can go through and solo individual outputs. So there's the center, or we can mute different ones. And these are really, really useful for just being totally confident that we're getting the audio in the right place. So I found those great to help me make sure that I'm sending the audio to where I expect it to go. So the next setting I want to show you is the Stereo Plus setting. So now we're listening to the down mix of the up mix. And there's the original stereo. Now the Stereo Plus format is a little bit more subtle than the Penteo Music format, and one of the real advantages of the Stereo Plus format is that you don't have a problem if you lose the surround channels. So if I just mute the surround channels, so the down mix of the up mix still works, and it's really useful if you're a little concerned that further downstream that maybe the surround channels might get lost. You know, you may have a situation where the consumer has got their surround system turned on, but actually the speakers for the surround channels are disabled. So they would be missing quite a lot of the content. So that's the Stereo Plus format. The next mode I want to look at is the quadraphonic mode. So in this mode, you can see that we're not sending anything to the center channel or to the side surrounds as we're working in 7.1. We take a look at how that relates to the 5.1 mode. You can see here that we just don't send any audio to the center channel. So back to the 7.1 mode. And so what we're doing here is essentially sending it to the four corners: the front left, the front right, the rear right, and the rear left. And for sound effects like this is a really, really useful preset, because what it's able to do is to keep the audio away from the center channel. So I'm not putting any of this effects into the center channel, which is usually where the dialogue is, so we can keep it completely clear. And it's a great shame that you can't experience the surround, because this wind now feels as though it's buffeting me from all directions. Very, very impressive the way that this stereo sound effect now is completely immersing. And so I'm feeling as though I'm being buffeted from all directions. So there's the stereo. And the down mix of the up mix. The next preset is the triangle preset.
It is done.
Now the triangle preset is almost the reverse of the quad. Now what it's doing is putting the common content, the mono content, into the center channel, and then routing anything that's differential or intermediate into the rear channels. So again, if we were in the 5.1 version, then again we're just putting it into the center channel and to the two surround channels. So back to our 7.1 version, it's again going to the center channel and the two rear channels.
I shall tell him that Mother Devi comes in many forms, and I have chosen. And
one of the real uses for this mode is it actually keeps the front left and right clear. So if you did have a situation where you had wide dialogue and you didn't want to hide that or mask it with sound effects then, or with music, then you can. And it's really interesting when you listen to the surround version of this that it still feels very enveloping. So most of the music now is in the rear channels. Yep, there is a little bit of music coming into the center channel, because obviously some of that music is pretty well mono. It's equal in level and phase both left and right channels. But it does give a very impressive, immersive
I do not
feel.
want a mystical goddess. I want it plain and
So the next preset we're going to take a look at is the hard center preset. And in this mode, there really is, what they do is they take away the phantom center option when these faders are at 0. So now all the mono content is being routed to the center channel.
This is the end.
And what I can do here, this is where these controls can really be very useful, because this center fader, you may think it's a
Life of austerity and
level for the center channel. It's not really, it's much more of a divergence control, because what it's doing is determining how much of the ratio between phantom center and hard center. And in essence, it's a divergence. So the more I push this up, the less divergence. So you can see now that the level has increased. Whereas if I bring that back down, we've now got much less center level. So it's almost complete divergence there. So we're like 100% divergence. And one of the things that they have done with the Penteo 7 is double the range of all these controls. So whereas before we could only go up to +3 dB and down to -6, now we can go up to +6 and down to -12. Because they found that we wanted basically some more range on these controls. And so they've given us that little bit extra range to give us options to tweak further. Now the side and rear surrounds are really more like a level control. So yes, you can increase the amount of audio going into the side surrounds or decrease it, or increase the amount of level going into the rear surrounds or decrease it. And of course we can put those back to their default settings. And you've got the option here to link the faders here. So now you can link the surrounds, both the sides and the rears, if you wanted to bring them up and down together. So we'll just turn that link off for now. Now we've not really taken a look at the low frequency section here. So let's go back to the Penteo music preset. So here we've got some music with some low frequency content. And what we can do with the low frequency settings is we can in essence take some of the low frequency elements and put it into the LFE channel. In split mode, it's redistributing the LF content, so it's taking it away from the fronts, taking it away from the main channels and putting it into the LFE, so there's no overall increase in level. But we can adjust the crossover point at which it happens, but of course the thing with the down mix is you're not going to hear these benefits. But if I go into boost mode, now what's happening is it is boosting the low end. So this way we're not redistributing it, we're just adding to it. But of course one of the problems we have with adding to it is that as we bring the level up, it's quite possible for the low frequency content, because it's more often than not mono, the low frequency content could quite easily overload the center channel. So we can set this diverge mode on, and that redistributes the LF boosted content into the left and right channels. So it spreads it out, so it's less likely to distort the center channel. We've got the option to now effectively work out where the turnover is, where the boost point is. So if you consider almost this as a low frequency shelving boost. Now of course there is a whole debate as to whether one should be redirecting low frequency content of your music into the LFE channel, but that's something we'll leave for another place. But the features are here. Obviously it may well be that you're not working with music, you're working with sound effects. So if we just go into that blustery wind again and we run that, so now what we can do is we can increase the low frequency of that wind and push that into the LFE channel. So in that setting, this is really useful for being able to enhance sound effects. We've still got the options window. That's buttons moved down here, but the principle is the same. We've got access to the user guide, and we've also got the option of how we can control the various controls. So with the vertical drag off, at the moment to use the mouse, I need to draw effectively round the control to change the settings. So if we go in and turn on the vertical settings and hit the save button, now what happens is I can drag the mouse up and down and the control goes round and round. So going across ways doesn't do anything, but selecting the control and then dragging up or down enables me to adjust the control, and that's the same for the level controls. So you can choose which way you want to work. I tend to use the scroll wheel on my mouse to adjust that. I find that a very convenient way of adjusting the controls without having to think. So you've got that option. You can turn the tips on and off. You've seen the tips as I've been hovering around. And then there's a low latency mode, because you'll notice here that we have quite a lot of delay involved in the plugin. So you may find, especially on older Pro Tools systems, for instance, I remember when I was using Penteo 4 on my old Pro Tools 10 system, I had to go into the absolute maximum delay compensation because it is using quite a significant amount of delay. So obviously if you're using this, you must have delay compensation turned on. But there is a low latency mode. So if we go into the low latency mode, hit save, you'll notice that all the displays now go red, which is warning you that it's gone into low latency mode. And you'll notice here now that the Penteo 7, the 7.1 version that we're looking at the moment, because it's got a black display, that's now gone down to 5,814 samples. So if we just go back into the options and turn the low latency off, hit save, then we're now back up to the 11,958 samples of delay. And that's largely because there's look-aheads going on to help make all this work as well as it does. But we're not finished yet. There is a new option with the Penteo 7 plugin in that you can do audio suite rendering. So we can open up an audio suite version of our Penteo 7 Pro plugin. In this case, I've done a 7.1 instance of it. And what we can do is we can highlight a region, a clip, click the Analyze button, goes away and does the analysis. And then what we can do is there are two different ways that we can determine where the audio will get rendered. We can either just make a selection on the lower track and hit the render button, but to keep it in sync, here's a little trick. If we just effectively move the selection down onto our 7.1 track, now when I hit render, and there we go, there is our 7.1 audio suite rendered version. So I had to make the choice, because one of the limitations within the Pro Tools platform is you can't go from a stereo track to a surround track. When you're doing audio suite processing, the input channel count and the output channel count have to be the same. So you can use that trick that I just showed you of actually just moving the selection down. And I'm using the keyboard command focus on the semicolon button, which is the keyboard command focus to move a selection down. But if you don't want to do that, then there is a little trick. Because I'm going from stereo to 7.1, we need 8 tracks. And so what we can do is we've got our stereo, and if I put a dummy empty 5.1 track in between the two, and I highlight that and then extend the selection down so both are highlighted, we now have 8 channels highlighted. So now we can do our analysis. We can now use this option here to select which track we want to send the final output to. So we want to send it to my 7.1 track. Now I can hit render, and it will put the rendered version onto my 7.1 track, bang in sync with the original stereo. So it's a bit of a workaround because of the limitations of the way that Pro Tools Audio Suite processing works in needing the same amount of inputs and outputs. But as long as you accept that workaround, then you can do it like that, or you can choose to make the selection yourself. So we'll just hide that 5.1 track. So you make your selection, you analyze it, you then move the selection down to the track that you want, and then hit the render button, and it will process it through, and we're done. So that's really useful, especially if you're going to hand on a project who may not have this plugin. You can confidently create stem tracks with all the upmixing laid out on these tracks. You can probably leave the original stereo content, you can probably hide and make inactive, and then whoever's working on the session further downstream from you can just use the Audio Suite rendered versions, but you've always got the original to go back to if somebody wants to change the way that the upmix was done further downstream. So to recap, we can now, with the new Penteo 7 Pro plugin, upmix from stereo up to 7.1. We can do 3.0. The one preset that we just didn't take a look at is the LCR preset. So we can use that one to just put the audio across the front 3 channels. So we can go anywhere from 3.0 all the way up to 7.1. So with the Penteo 7 Pro, we can now do Audio Suite processing, which is really useful. We've got more range now on our faders, which again was user feedback. We just found that we needed a little bit more range. There were some times when I just couldn't push it hard enough up on the old Penteo 4. And of course, by going all the way up to 7.1, we can now use Penteo 7 in immersive sound workflows, whether it's with Dolby Atmos or Auro 3D. So I'm really sorry that I've not been able to demonstrate the surround capability so you can actually hear how well Penteo 7 Pro upmixes. It carries on in the pedigree of all the Penteo plugins, Penteo 3, Penteo 4, now Penteo 7. You'll have to take my word for it that the upmixing is absolutely superb when you listen to it on a surround channel. It's great now to be able to see it in a format that we can easily integrate into Dolby Atmos and Auro 3D immersive sound formats. The Audio Suite rendering will just be a phenomenal addition to the toolset. And so all in all, Penteo 4, of course, we gave editor's choice to, and we just seem to be having a number of plugins at the moment where there's already a really good plugin, and now they've just made it even better. So Penteo 7 Pro continues with its Editor's Choice Award. Congratulations.